Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of this week's vlog. It's been a week. It's been a little challenging, but we made it to Friday. Today is a self-care day for me. It's important to schedule those when you have so much in my life as I do, and making it a 4-day weekend always is another thing. And ironically, for as much as I struggle with 4-day weekends in the past, I'm feeling well rested right now, and I'm going to continue to do that over the next day or so. Nonetheless, I struggled with finding a topic this week to vlog about, but then it came to me this morning as I was watching some investigative journalism on YouTube by Chris Hansen. If I'm not going to go into what he just investigates particularly, but many in the United States know of my age or around my age know what he has done, and he's been on national television, and in fact he's now on a more low-scale network that is more broadcasted to YouTube. Nonetheless, in the process of watching his investigations today, it taught me how much we don't stop and think about things when we're autistic. And I don't know if it was just because the person he was interviewing and I don't like to say it, but it kind of made me think of like how an autistic person doesn't stop and think before they do things. And those were the words he was using. And then, also in that same investigation, he used the words naivety, like naivety and vulnerability. And those were words that were taught to me, at a very, I would say not a young age, but I think I've heard them past my parents' lips before as their concern for me became apparent. And it's not been recently, it's been when I was coming of age. And while they advocated for me to have a life after school, after high school, and we know how that cliff is when we graduate high school as autistic people that need assistance or have an IEP or transition. Transition is talked about at 14 now, and it must be very different than what I think it's very different from what it is 25 years ago, 25 years ago, give or take. But, I was doing something that was pretty well not the thing. I don't want to say it wasn't not the thing. It just wasn't something that was really done. And it's done in other areas. And it was a lot of hurdles to climb. So there was a lot of concern about me leaving my small town and going to another city, which wasn't really, it was a little big, it's a little bigger. And, being there on my own, and it wasn't the first time I'd say I'd be away, but it was the first time I wouldn't be with anybody who I knew. And it's actually for training purposes. It was a 3-week training trial or evaluation, vocational evaluation. And during that time, as we know, autistic people can be very vulnerable and they can be very naive. Those were words that passed my father's lips as they were dropping me off. We had to meet with a dorm counselor, and I believe he's still there. Some 20, almost 20 years ago from now. But some of the things I remember about that, and I think it comes out a lot in social media sometimes. I see it in some people's pages, but the vulnerability, the being naive and taking everything for what it is. But when I look at the past and I see things that we don't know, like street smarts, for example, because going to this school, I was with with peers, not only from all walks of life in Pennsylvania. And if you don't know what Pennsylvania is, it's quite the melting pot. You have people from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia who are basically off the streets, and you have people from other smaller cities, and you have people who are rural, and you have people of all different backgrounds. So that kind of puts you, it's like, it was like a melting pot with 400 people at the time. So it was a lot to know and a lot to understand, and a lot to know the street smarts. Some things were like that didn't come natural, was like, locking the dorm room after you step out into the hallway, or making sure you have your keys on you at all times, making not giving your cell phone out to people, not letting people take advantage of you, not letting people victimize you, not being taken advantage of, and not being vulnerable to others. And I think, sometimes you either get all defensive and you're afraid to do anything, you're afraid to open up about things, and or you just let it all out. And I've seen, I was with a roommate at the time, and I had known him through a previous educational experience, and he was more vulnerable, but I chose not to go that way. It's very reserved. I was very shy, probably because I was anxious and shy, and it just I was a loner at the time. I was a loner a long time, and there was a lot of backfiring about that. But it took a long time for me to open up socially. It's a very hard time. I didn't open up socially probably until I was almost 30 years old, and I'm 38 now. I'm 38, a little bit over 38. But it took a long time to open up socially, but it's not easy. But when you do, you have to be mindful of things, and not be open and vulnerable, not the oversharing, choosing what to share, what not to share. There's a lot of social nuances and social pragmatics that need to be understood. And I think having that vocational training experience, which later turned into vocational education, gave me the opportunity to work on those and be a more better person, at knowing the not to be vulnerable, not to be open, not to let people take advantage of me. It's not to say that I didn't in some ways later on in life, but I'm better at it, and I'm a more stronger person. And it gives me that opportunity. And I see others, it can be where people get open and take advantage of people. And it doesn't hurt me, but it's like you can only do so much education in life. You can only go so far as educating others. But until you have to stand your boundaries and stand your ground. So moving forward, as time progressed, it took some time for me to even open up more as a human being. It's probably about, like I said, 8 years ago that I started being open, at the day program. And I wasn't really vulnerable because I really knew I was really on a day-to-day basis with some of these individuals. And some of them are very close, and even some of them, even though a few may have left the program, I still connect to them because I've known them all my life. But sometimes we have to learn how to keep those boundaries, and especially in a job that I am in, you have to keep boundaries. So it's not always, you're going to find that friendship or that relationship there. And it was a big can of worms. I was very, very vulnerable and very close to open because we're vulnerable and we're open to those things. So if someone perceives that they want to, you don't understand social context, social clues, social nuances, social pragmatics, you could very well walk yourself into a relationship. And in fact, I did that for some time. It's a very unhealthy, very toxic relationship. And it not only happened the first one time, but it happened twice in my life. And I don't really get into the details of that because that's personal life. But I can tell you that it was very unhealthy, and it did trickle down onto my family. And when I was unhealthy and it was very toxic and very challenging, it just brought the whole house down. And I don't want to live that way. So we move forward past understanding what the nuances and the social media. And so we get into this independent world probably about 5 years ago. And, like I said, I'm 38. So I'm not growing up on social media. I'm not growing up on a lot of technology, although I've had a computer in my home since I was 11. So I've had some connection, but not like connection like the world we know today. Thankfully, I've had, some education, not only through community college when I went back to community college about 10 or 11 years ago, but and I do have a degree, an associate's degree in web technology, and I have a certificate in web applications. But even at that, I'm not totally, you don't totally, as an autistic person, you don't totally get some of the nuances that you need to know. And I think, I did say about, vulnerability and being naive, but even on Facebook today, we have a lot of questions about what's social media like for a person with autism. And everybody has their way of handling it. It has its positives and its negatives. It's here to stay, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, social media is here. How you choose to handle it is one thing or another. I really, like I said, I didn't really experience it until about 14 years ago. So because it was not a common thing until then. So I really had to learn as I went. And thankfully, I had enough education and just firsthand experience. And I went to enough continuing education through my employer, as well as, through my college experience, that I was able to grasp a lot of things and learn a lot of things just by my own self-knowledge and self-discovery. And even as I became independent and went through my individual discovery over the last 5 years, all while being unwell. I think, you can be unwell and not be thinking. And that's, for me personally, as not only being autistic and also have mental health challenges, that can make things 110% very bad. And that's back to where we circle back to where I was watching Chris Hansen today, where, the individual that he was interviewing and was committing these crimes did not stop and think, and he caused a lot of vulnerability and took advantage of people. So it makes you see both sides of the coin, because you can see how people can take advantage of people just because they're open. And it comes into the fact that, it's oversharing and not being sensible and doing things against the will. And some of it is due to social media. But, and I will say, it is a necessary evil. It's the world we live in. And I don't ever say do it or don't do it. But I will say the fact that if you don't sit down and have the honest conversations, or even the small conversations, as a family, if you have a very supportive family, or if the family is very supportive, you're not, you're just the individual. If you take the social media out of somebody's life, say you can't go on social media, that's a no-no. They're going to find a way because they're going to be interested. It's going to be ruminating in their mind. It's it's going to be constantly in their mind. So not all autistic individuals are interested in social media, but if they are, they're going to work their darndest to get it. Just like a relationship, if they want to find somebody, if they want a connection other than being at home or being independent and having to rely on entertaining themselves, they're going to find a way about it. And I think, a lot of times, I think even as we see some of these films that really, really highlight that, and it's not just people on the spectrum, it's people, neurotypical people as well. And I think there's a lot of good shows that catch that. And it's kind of, I want to say it's kind of, it does hit a trigger with me, because not because I don't want that. It's just I'm afraid of what I know. I know that there's triggers and there's things that's not going to go right about it. And I guess that's why I can't watch a lot of things about autism. It's too close to home, and I think you worry about the person being hurt. You have that empathy, and we always know that empathy. There people think we don't feel empathy, but when it comes to that, and seeing other people hurt because they're trying to do things that people like myself want to do, it is a little triggering. I won't lie to you about that. But we have these. So back to why, if you're finding and longing for that, if you're longing for some friendship or relationship, you don't have that, and you as the family member or supportive person don't have that conversation at an early start with an autistic person, or a person who has any kind of developmental or intellectual challenges, you're going to have, they're going to find it yourself. They're going to sneak it around. And sometimes in all honesty, it's best not to sneak it around. It's not best. It's very, and I know I'm saying that because I know. It's also important if you have loved ones or siblings that are real supportive of the individual. It's very important to have them be friends with them and be mutually connected in some way so they can see all that's going on. I'll give you an example of that. So, some people, those that love me and care about me, if they see something off and they don't see something, if they see something that isn't what my normal pattern is, they will reach out to me and they will say, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And for a long time, I was very hurt by that. I was very upset. I was like, why are they doing this? They're just being nosy. But in reality, through all the episode I've reached in the past 5 years, and it coming to an end, I realized that they care about me. And it does show me a sign that I need to be mindful of myself and do what I need to do and get some sleep or do whatever I need to do to better take care of myself. So when we look for connections, and if they see this, I think sometimes you do have to do an extreme vetting process. You have to be educated on social nuances. You have to be educated on social pragmatics and what that looks like, and what rejection. How do you take rejection? How do you how do you not open yourself up? And what big thing is about what you share and choose not to share. For me personally, I don't share my private life is my private life, and as it should be. So I don't really, I keep a private profile. I don't put a lot out there. I don't let a lot of people in. I do let people in, but I vet them. And I know it's like a presidential term, but I do vet them because I want to make sure they're going to be safe, supportive, welcoming, encouraging, and they're going to follow all my values, and they're going to follow everything about me, and I'm going to feel safe sharing my life with them. It's an all-in buy-in. You're gonna feel safe, and you don't want to set yourself up to be set into danger. And I think when I was unwell, I was getting that way. And thankfully it didn't get out of control, and thankfully I was able to at least keep myself under control. That I did eventually stop and hit the stop button, the invisible stop button, and really take care of myself when I needed to, at least if I could, because we know how the world is today. I will say that the world today, and even though if you are the victim and you are a person with a disability, and let's say it's even an invisible disability, you're not always on the good side of the law. You're always discounted. You're always it's not always clear. It's not always the way it's not, the law is not going to work in your favor. It's sometimes not, because they're not going to take your word. They're not going to value you unless you have really good counsel or really good defense, because it's there's if we can't advocate for ourselves and we can't be honest and we can't advocate for ourselves, it's not going to work on our side. I'm just going to be frank with you. It's not. So you have to be very careful when you're letting people into your personal life. You have to be very careful when you're opening yourself up as letting people in to your life. It's, you can't be you, and it's this thing because it's becoming a topic of trend with social media and autistic and intellectual and developmental people, because it's a thing. If you're not going to have that conversation, then they're going to do it, and because they're curious and they're going to find out, and it's not going to be, it's easier just to have that conversation. I've had conversations because, as I said, we were both in it at the same time, so we learning when as we went. So it's a learn, wait and see thing. But there's so much you could go on social media, but it's all about stopping and thinking before you do things. So it's the same with stopping and thinking before you post. It's this, or share something online, or share something that's a little vulnerable and not knowing where it's going or who can see it, because once it's out there, it's out there. So you can it's, you have to be mindful of that, and you have to be mindful of what you're sharing out there. I think, just being within the work that I'm in, in the mental health field, and just knowing so much in life, you have to know, you have to protect your credibility, you have to protect your life, and you have to be there. You have to be very cautious in this world. So it's very important to do that. It's very important. And also, being vulnerable and naive can also take effect, when we do live in the community and we do experience bias or judgment or anything in the community. For example, this week I've had some experience with a local pizza place. One day I ordered and the wrong item was brought to me. I ordered the food and it was paid for, and I didn't realize that the tip was already paid for, but that's here nor there. But when I opened the one item, it was not the correct item. I immediately called the restaurant back, explained my situation calmly, clearly. Because of the way I speak and my communication challenges, I was unable to speak. I had to repeat it a couple of times. So through this conversation, I'm told not to eat this item that was given to me, that was the wrong item, and that they were coming to pick it up. And I kind of thought that was weird, and I didn't understand it as a nuance. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to eat it because, number one, I don't need to eat it. It's not what I ordered, so I'm not going to eat it. And in part of my mind, I also knew that once something from an establishment enters my home, it really should not be in the hands of other people again. So that kind of like had a double message and kind of a mixed feeling to it. So, processing this week, you do the right thing because you're naive and you don't want to cause conflict, you don't want to react, you don't want to be elevated about it, but it's wrong and it's wrong. So you do it. And family talked about it this week, it was wrong. And I just did it because it was the right thing to do. It wasn't the right thing to do, but it was what they requested. And I figured if it's their food, I didn't touch it. I didn't really touch my hands on it. It's not right, but it is what it is. Fast forward to today, I order again from the same location because I have a coupon nonetheless. I didn't make delivery minimum, so I had to order with another coupon, it worked. The coupon worked out and it was fine. They brought me, it was 3 of one item. They only brought me 1. And I immediately advocated and said, I think we have an error. I think we're supposed to bring 3 of this item and not 1. And he corrected it and he brought it back right away. But still, we have to advocate. And that is challenging sometimes when we have trouble communicating as autistic adults, autistic people, any kind of people with challenges. But over time, I've had to learn to stand my ground in things because of these relationships, because of being drugged into vulnerable situations and having very toxic outcomes or having very unhealthy outcomes or very unwanted outcomes. Being vulnerable and open at times that I realized I shouldn't have been because I wasn't well or because I just gave in because I wanted somebody, I just wasn't thinking because I didn't stop and think before I did it. So that led to that being vulnerable, open, and naive about something. But in all honesty, it brings it back to where it was like when I was 19 or 20, when I was going into trade school and, learning things like locking the door and having your phone on you, not opening your phone to everyone. And mind you, this was 20 years ago. So, all these things teach me about vulnerability. And, seeing that today kind of hits at home that, you have to stop and think before you do things. You have to stop and think before you say things that may hurt or be offensive to others. You have to stop and think before you post things on social media. You have to just stop and think in general and not just jump to things because you're going to react. You're not going to stop and think, and something bad is going to happen, and it's going to be too late. I think about that a lot. I think about things that I've done in the past year, and not even just the past year, but like 2022, as well, 2020, the year 2020. There were things that are very tragic and very toxic and very triggering for me, but I got them out in therapy, and it was very helpful to me. But I do realize I was on the doorstep of going into a hospital or going into a corrections facility. And when I saw that today, it kind of hit home because it could. I think, back in circling back to 2023, some of the things I said or did were not the right things. I didn't think them through. I didn't take time to care for myself. I didn't take time to walk away from a situation that was elevated and challenging and just focus on getting myself better. And in fact, I know I did things that were wrong and not healthy for me. And it took 6 months, almost 5 or 6 months to get out of that. But I live with that regret every day. I regret that I said those things. I regret that I didn't stop and think before saying things that revved up the fire in one situation and caused a spiral of actions. I regret that. And I think I had to say it because I had to say it. But in reality, you have to stop and think before you say things. You have to choose your words carefully and you have to choose what you share and not share. You have to choose. It's a choice that you make. The choice because, you can't be open and vulnerable about it yourself and expect to live life innocently and not know that you could be in trouble or the law not be on your side. So thank you for letting me get that out. I think I needed to get that out. It was healthy, but it's been on my mind all day and I wasn't thinking about something. I was taking care of myself today, but I just had to let that out. So thank you again for listening. Just my little rant about that, but I think I hope somebody took something home from that today. So be sure to like and follow and subscribe to this content. Try to bring out much better content. And I even had a list today. I think I covered it all, but it's just so well. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest at Dustin's Dynasty, on the web at DustinDynastyUSA.com. And I have a link tree. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty. I want to thank you again for listening and watching. Have a good weekend. Take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.